The email arrived at 7:12 a.m., long before the sun even bothered to rise. Sarah was still half asleep, curled on the couch with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders, trying to convince herself to face another winter morning. Her coffee sat untouched on the table, steam fading into the cold air of their small but cozy apartment. The city outside was barely awake. Only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a neighbour's dog broke the silence. Her phone buzzed once. Just one simple buzz. But that tiny vibration might as well have been a warning siren. She glanced at the screen and immediately felt her shoulders tense. Brenda Harper, New Year's Family Coordination. 12 exclamation points. That alone was enough to make Sarah's stomach sink. She knew Brenda, her mother-in-law, well enough to recognise this as the beginning of trouble. Brenda didn't coordinate. She commanded. Still, Sarah opened the email, and that is when her peaceful morning died. The message unfolded like a disaster report, disguised in politeness. Brenda had written it as if she were doing them a favour. Sweet tone, friendly greetings, unnecessary emojis. But every line tightened around Sarah like a rope. Brenda had created a full spreadsheet. A full 27-person spreadsheet. Every name, every gift, every detail already assigned and dictated, all to Sarah. She stared at the list, frozen. She hadn't even finished reading before the panic started creeping up her spine. There were cousins she had never met, children she didn't know existed, an old neighbour's companion who apparently needed a $100 bottle of single malt scotch. There were model numbers, colours, exact brands, and even instructions on the wrapping paper. Her breath caught in her throat as she scrolled down and saw the total cost adding up in her head. Over $2,000, just for gifts. Just because Brenda had decided Sarah was the designated Christmas elf this year. Her coffee had gone ice cold. She didn't even notice Alex coming out of the bathroom until he walked into the kitchen, hair still damp, humming lightly to himself, completely unaware that his mother had just detonated a nuclear bomb into their household. Sarah didn't speak. She didn't move. She simply pushed the laptop toward him with trembling fingers. Alex leaned forward, reading with tired eyes. For a moment, he looked confused. Then resigned. Then defeated. He knew exactly what this meant. Sarah saw it in his face, the quiet dread of a son who had grown up under Brenda's manipulative thumb. "Oh, wow," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. She really went for it this year." Sarah blinked. Went for it? This wasn't going for it. This was madness. But Alex just gave her a helpless little shrug. The same shrug he always did when it came to his mother. Sarah suddenly felt the anger rise, not loud or explosive, but slow and burning, the kind that sits deep in the chest. She had tried for years to win Brenda's approval. She had smiled politely at the insults disguised as jokes, accepted the backhanded compliments, tolerated the intrusion into their marriage. But this crossed a line. A deep, invisible line she didn't even realise she had until now. The apartment felt smaller. The air felt tighter. Sarah sat back, staring at the list again, a cold knot forming in her stomach. This was not just about gifts. It was about control. It was about respect. It was about the growing realisation that if she didn't put her foot down now, she never would. And somewhere beneath all that frustration, she felt something else. A spark. A beginning. Because this email wasn't the end of her sanity. It was the beginning of the story she would never forget. When the girl pretended to be sick, she didn't expect anything unusual to happen. She simply wanted to skip school and rest at home, wrapped in a blanket with her favourite show playing in the background. But the quiet afternoon suddenly changed when she heard the front door open softly. much earlier than her mother would ever return. Curious, she got up and peeked from behind the staircase railing. It was her aunt, moving around the living room with a strange calmness, as if she belonged there. The girl watched silently as her aunt looked over her shoulder multiple times, checking if someone was watching. Then, with slow, careful movements, she slipped something small and metallic into the pocket of her mum's coat, hanging by the door. The girl's heart started pounding. She didn't understand what she was witnessing, but she could feel something was wrong. Very wrong. Her aunt's expression wasn't casual. It was tense, calculated, almost nervous. The girl stayed hidden until her aunt left, but by then her mind was racing with fear and questions she never thought she would face. When I finally steadied my breathing, I slipped silently down the hallway, following the faint rustle of movement coming from the laundry room. The door was slightly open, just enough for me to see my aunt's back as she hunched over my mum's coat, her fingers moving in quick, desperate motions. My heart thudded painfully. She wasn't just checking pockets, she was placing something inside, pushing an object deep into the inner lining like she had done it before. My stomach turned. The moment she stepped back, her face changed into a look I had never seen. Cold, calculated, almost satisfied. I froze where I stood, terrified she might hear me. She whispered something under her breath, words too low to catch, but the tone sent a chill down my spine. Then she fixed the coat perfectly on the hanger, smoothed it out like nothing had happened, and walked away with a strange calmness. I waited until her footsteps faded before creeping into the room. The air felt heavy, the silence louder than any scream. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I reached toward the coat, every part of me warning. This was something I wasn't meant to see, but I needed to know. I needed proof. As I slipped my fingers into the lining, I felt it. A small, hard object wrapped in thin plastic. My blood ran cold. Why would she hide something in Mum's coat? Why today? And worst of all, what was she planning to blame my mother for? A sick realization hit me. If Mum wore this coat tonight and the wrong person found it, the police wouldn't hesitate. Someone wanted my mother framed, and it was happening right in front of me. Tears blurred my vision as I held the object, unable to decide whether to pull it out or leave it hidden until I knew more. Everything inside me screamed that whatever was happening was much bigger and far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. That entire evening, the house felt heavier than usual, like someone had pressed a weight on every wall, every breath, every step I took. Mum moved around quietly, pretending everything was normal, but I noticed her hands trembling each time she picked up her tea. Aunt Sarah kept pacing near the living room window, pulling the curtain back every few minutes as if she was expecting someone, or afraid someone might arrive. I sat on the sofa replaying the moment I saw her slip something into Mum's coat pocket. The image refused to leave my mind. The way her eyes darted around, the panic on her face when she realized I was behind her, it all kept scratching at my thoughts. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. When dinner time came, nobody touched their food. Mum pushed her plate away after 2 bites. Aunt Sarah kept wiping her hands with a napkin, even though they were perfectly clean. The silence wasn't normal. It was the kind of silence that hides secrets, lies, and danger. At one point, I excused myself and pretended to go to the bathroom, but instead, I went straight to Mum's room. Her coat was still hanging on the chair. My heart thudded painfully as I reached into the pocket. My fingers touched something hard, cold. I pulled out a small metal key tied to a red tag with numbers written in permanent marker. A storage unit key. Why would my aunt hide this? Why in my mum's coat? Before I could stop myself, 100 theories flooded my mind. Was Mum in danger? Was Aunt Sarah trying to frame her? Or were they hiding something together? Something that could bring the police to our door? Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. I hid the key inside my sleeve just as the bedroom door opened. Aunt Sarah stood there, her eyes wide, her breathing uneven. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded, her voice shaking more than she probably intended. I forced a calm smile. "Just grabbing a blanket." She didn't respond, but the way she kept staring at my hands made my skin crawl. She knew something, she suspected something, and she wasn't going to let this go. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake analysing every detail. The key, her behaviour, Mum's nervous silence. With every moment that passed, the truth felt closer, like the walls were whispering something I wasn't yet ready to hear. One thing was clear. Whatever they were hiding, it wasn't small, and by tomorrow the police might be involved. Because secrets like these always explode, and tonight felt like the calm before a storm. When the truth finally began to unwind, everything I thought I knew about my family started collapsing. That evening, while I sat quietly in my room, I replayed every moment from the past few days. The strange whispers, the aunt's nervous looks, and my mother's sudden anxiety that she tried so hard to hide. It felt like puzzle pieces that never made sense were suddenly sliding into place on their own. I kept hearing my aunt's trembling voice, confessing that she had planted something inside Mum's coat, and it made my stomach twist all over again. Why would she do that? Why target her own sister? And why, tonight, of all nights, did it feel like something worse was coming? As I walked toward the living room, I could sense the tension in the air shifting, almost like the walls were listening to every breath we took. Mum sat on the sofa, silently wiping her tears while pretending everything was fine, but her shaking hands betrayed her calmness. My aunt stood in the corner, restless, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The fear in her eyes was no longer subtle. It was loud, trembling, almost begging someone to notice. I knew then, whatever she had hidden wasn't small, wasn't harmless, and definitely wasn't an accident. The house felt heavier, the air thicker, and for the first time I realised tonight might be the night everything explodes, and none of us would be able to take it back. When Mum reached home that night, the entire house felt different, heavy, silent, like the truth itself was waiting inside. I was sitting on the sofa, my hands shaking, the hidden camera video open on my phone. Mum walked in, tired but smiling, until she saw my face. "What happened? Why are you crying?" she asked, dropping her purse. I didn't answer, I just pressed play. The footage started. It showed me sitting in bed, pretending to be sick. Then sneaking downstairs. Then Aunt Liza quietly entering our hallway. And finally, her slipping a small velvet pouch deep inside Mum's winter coat. Mum's face changed instantly. Shock, confusion, fear. Her hands covered her mouth. She put that inside my coat. Why? Mum whispered, tears forming. Before I could answer, we heard the sound of a car pulling up. Headlights flashed through the curtains. Mum froze. "I think that's her," she said quietly. A knock on the door followed, slow, intentional. Mum opened the door, and yes, Aunt Liza stood there breathing heavily, hair messy, eyes wide as if she'd been running. She stepped inside without being invited. "Where is it?" she demanded. Mum looked confused. "Where is what, Liza?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," she screamed. Her voice cracked. "We can fix this if you just give it back, before the police show up." My heart dropped. Police? Showing up for what? And why was she blaming Mum? Mum stayed calm. "Liza, you planted something in my coat. I know because my daughter..." Aunt Liza interrupted her with a trembling laugh, almost hysterical. So she saw it. Your brilliant daughter who always listens at the door. She looked at me with pure rage. You ruined everything. Then she suddenly broke down. She sank into a chair, holding her head. I didn't want to involve you, she whispered, but I owed money, a lot of money, to the wrong people. They were going to come after me. I panicked. I thought if the blame fell on someone else, someone with a clean reputation, I could buy more time. Mum stepped back, horrified. So, you tried to frame me? Your own sister? Liza didn't respond. She just cried. Then, blue and red lights flashed through the windows. 2 police cars arrived outside. A loud voice shouted, Open the door! Police! Mum grabbed my hand. It's going to be okay, she whispered. Aunt Liza stood up, defeated. She didn't run. She didn't argue. She just nodded, as if accepting the truth. When the officers entered, Mum calmly handed them the velvet pouch. They opened it. Inside was cash, banded stacks, a lot of it, and a necklace, gold, heavy, with a missing diamond. Aunt Liza broke down completely. It wasn't hers, Mum said firmly, pointing at the coat. She planted it there. My daughter saw everything. The officers listened. They took statements. They reviewed the hidden camera clip I had recorded. Everything matched. And then they placed handcuffs on Aunt Liza. The moment she looked at us before being taken away, I'll never forget it. A mix of regret, shame, and something like love buried deep under her mistakes. After the police left, Mum hugged me tightly, longer than she ever had. You saved me, she whispered, but you also saved her, because if she had gone any further, there would be no coming back. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because I realized something powerful. Sometimes pretending to be sick reveals the sickness in others. And the truth? It always comes out, no matter who tries to bury it. The tension in the house felt like a storm about to burst. I stood in the hallway, breathing hard, replaying every strange moment from the last few days. My aunt sneaking around, whispering on the phone, slipping something into my mum's coat like she owned the place. And now, everything was finally coming together in one terrifying, heartbreaking picture. When Mum walked in and saw us all gathered, her face went pale. I knew she sensed something was wrong. Before she could speak, my aunt stepped forward, trying to act innocent, but her voice shook. Mum looked between us, confused, worried, exhausted. I slowly explained everything I had seen, every detail, every suspicious move. The room went silent. Mum's hands trembled as she reached into the coat pocket and pulled out the small envelope my aunt had hidden, full of documents that could have framed Mum for something she didn't even know about. Mum's knees nearly gave out. My aunt tried to lie, but her voice cracked. The truth spilled out. She had been planning to blame Mum for money she herself had stolen. She wanted sympathy, wanted control, wanted everything. Mum's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from betrayal. And then, before anything else could happen, the police knocked on the door, responding to the report we had filed earlier. My aunt froze. Mum squeezed my hand, silently thanking me for being brave enough to see through the act. As the officers led my aunt away, the house felt lighter, broken, shaken, but free. And for the first time in a long time, Mum hugged me like she finally believed everything I had been trying to protect her from. The night ended with truth, with tears and with a promise. This family would never again be fooled by the people pretending to love us.